The divisional round of the NFL playoffs is now in the books. And before we head on to championship weekend, let's take a look at what happened. This is a Sports Ball Network, and this is our NFL divisional round breakdown. Things kicked off Saturday afternoon in Baltimore as the number one seeded Ravens easily took care of the number four seeded Houston Texans in a 34-10 victory. I shouldn't necessarily say that things were entirely easy for Baltimore, as this game was pretty close up until the fourth quarter. But once the fourth quarter came, Baltimore rattled off 17 of their 34 points and ran away with the game. For the Texans, it was an off day on offense for them. CJ Stroud only threw for 175 yards. Devin Singletary led the team with 22 rushing yards in total. Nico Collins was the team's leading receiver, 5 receptions for 68 yards. And on defense, the team mostly held out through the first three quarters, but ultimately was not able to stop Baltimore in the fourth when it mattered most, accumulating only 3 sacks throughout the entire day. Houston should be happy with where their team is going into 2024. They were not expected to get this far, and they were not expected to win their division. But now, going into the offseason, they have possibly a top 10 quarterback in only his second year. A lot of young talent on both the offensive and the defensive side of the ball, and a lot of capital and draft picks to continue to improve this roster. I fully expect this team to be competitive next year and possibly to go even deeper in the playoffs than they did at the end of this one. For Baltimore, this game showed why they are the number one seed in the AFC. Lamar threw for 2 touchdowns and 152 yards in the air, but added 100 yards on the ground and 2 more touchdowns. There's a reason why he's the MVP, guys. He does it all in the air and on the ground. Justice Hill also added 66 more yards on the ground at running back, and Zay Flowers led the way at receiver, 4 receptions for 41 yards for him. The defense for Baltimore actually did not do a lot in this game. CJ Stroud did not throw an interception. He wasn't sacked at all, but they stopped Houston when it mattered most and prevented them from scoring, which is ultimately why they won this game. Now, Baltimore goes into the AFC Championship game 2 games away from the Super Bowl with a chance to finally dethrone Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC. The Green Bay Packers, as the first 7 seed to make it past the wild card round, gave the number one seeded San Francisco 49ers everything they could handle in Saturday night's game. But ultimately, San Francisco ended up taking this one in a 24-21 thriller. San Francisco did not have a pretty game. Brock Purdy threw for 252 yards and a touchdown, but he did look off for a lot of the night and was missing pretty routine throws at times. Christian McCaffrey was dominant, though, 98 yards and 2 touchdowns for him. George Kittle led the receiving room, 4 receptions, 81 yards, and a touchdown for him. Something to note here, Deebo Samuel did leave the game with an injury that's going to be very important going into the NFC Championship. The defense had 2 interceptions, and ultimately, San Francisco did just enough to beat Green Bay here. Uh, I mentioned it wasn't pretty for San Francisco, and going into the fourth quarter, they were down 21-17. Uh, and there was a real chance for them to lose this game. But ultimately, Brock Purdy and the offense did enough. San Francisco's moving on, and now they are 2 games away from getting to the Super Bowl and winning it all while they're going to be able to play their next game at home. Jordan Love led Green Bay on offense, 194 yards and 2 touchdowns for him. Of course, he had 2 interceptions as well, including a costly pick to put this game away. Aaron Jones continued his great play on the ground, 108 yards on 18 carries for him. Romeo Dobbs continued his tremendous streak of play as well, 4 receptions, 83 yards in the air for him. The Green Bay defense, though, ultimately was not able to do anything to San Francisco. They only had a single sack in this game. And although there were times where they were preventing San Francisco from scoring, it was apparent that they were not doing enough. And at the end of the day, it ended up costing them the game. Green Bay goes into this off season with an interesting outlook. They're a young team. They're the youngest in the NFL right now, and they weren't expected to be here. And they could very easily take another step forward. Uh, but at the same time, they could take a step back if some of their players like Jordan Love, Romeo Dobbs, uh, Christian Watson don't continue to expand on their growth from this year, and if the defense is unable to add any more talent. But ultimately, I think Green Bay is in a pretty good spot. They have a lot of draft picks, a lot of capital, and a lot of young talent. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them improve in 2024 and possibly contend for the NFC North. Speaking of the NFC North, there is one NFC North team still alive for a potential Super Bowl appearance. It's not the Minnesota Vikings, it's not the Green Bay Packers, and it's not the Chicago Bears. It's the Detroit Lions, who ended up winning their second playoff game in as many weeks, 31 to 23 over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jared Goff was phenomenal in this game, 287 yards and 2 touchdowns for him. Jameer Gibbs led the way in the ground, 9 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown. Unreal efficiency from him. Amon-Ra St. Brown did his thing, 8 receptions, 77 yards and a touchdown. Sam Laporta, 9 receptions, 65 yards. The Detroit defense, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. And the Detroit Lions are 2 games away from winning the Super Bowl. Cannot believe I said that, but man, is it thrilling. For Tampa Bay, they go into the offseason now, but they have to be encouraged. Baker Mayfield threw for 349 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Rashad White ran for 55 yards on 9 carries. Mike Evans was great, 8 receptions, 147 yards, and a touchdown for him. Cade Otton at tight end, 5 receptions, 65 yards, and a touchdown. Defense had 2 sacks. And Tampa played well in this game. Ultimately, they did not have enough. But considering where they're at and considering where the rest of their division is at, I would not be surprised if we see them back here next year. The divisional round ended on Sunday evening with another Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen classic. And once again, unfortunately for the Buffalo faithful, it was Patrick Mahomes that found a way to win this one, as the Kansas City Chiefs held on right at the end for a thrilling 27 to 24 victory. Patrick Mahomes was great in this game, 215 yards and 2 touchdowns for him. Isaiah Pacheco was also phenomenal. He had 97 yards on 15 carries, as well as a touchdown on the ground. Travis Kelsey had an enormous game, 5 receptions, 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And the defense, well, the defense did not really do much in this game in terms of statistics, but they were able to hold off Josh Allen and the Buffalo offense just enough so that way Kansas City could pull away with this win. Speaking of Josh Allen and that offense, man, it was all Josh Allen once again. 186 yards and a touchdown in the air for him, 72 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. James Cook added another 61 yards on 18 carries. Dalton Kincaid led the receivers, 5 receptions, 45 yards. The Buffalo defense did not really do a lot in this game in terms of statistics either, but there were several key drives where they forced Kansas City into punts. And this was just a great game. It was a great game, and it had one of the more memorable endings in recent playoff memory as Tyler Bass kicked the ball, sailed wide right, the 2 words that Buffalo fans hate the most, and now it's Kansas City moving on to the championship game. Buffalo, meanwhile, goes into the offseason with some questions, particularly at coach. Is Sean McDermott going to keep his job with guys like Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick on the market? I'm not sure, but I will say this: McDermott has won the AFC East with this Buffalo team 4 years in a row, and it's really hard to win in the playoffs. Ultimately, time will tell what happens to this iteration of the Buffalo Bills, but I do believe Coach McDermott will be back. That's not to say there won't be changes. There will be changes. The team is starting to age out a little bit, and guys like Stephon Diggs and Von Miller could be on their way out. But so long as Buffalo has a quarterback like Josh Allen on their roster, who, by the way, has 30 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions in his playoff career, they will be competitive no matter what. As for Kansas City, there's not much to say here. Ever since Patrick Mahomes took over as the starter, they have never missed the AFC Championship game. And they've made 3 Super Bowls in that time. Will they make a fourth? Guess we'll have to find out next Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning into our video and into the Sports Ball Network. If you liked what you saw, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.